Hello, everyone. My name is Matthias Röder. I'm the CEO of the Karajan Institute in Salzburg, and I'm really happy to welcome you all to our, I believe, third Backstage session. The idea of this format is to give you a glimpse of the upcoming Karajan Music Tech Conference, but also to introduce some of the exciting and interesting people in our community and discuss issues of great importance to the music world. As you know, the Karajan Music Tech Network is a network of visionaries and decision makers in music, and we try to provide a platform where they can meet, interact, and where they can actually work on getting their visions into reality. So with that, I want to welcome my team to the stage, Julia Binek and Thomas Richter. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm always a little bit nervous before these streams, but doing well.
But that makes it interesting, no?
Are you, Thomas? How are you?
I'm quite fine, just despite all the current things happening in the world. But I'm very fine. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, you know, as we did last time, we want to hear from you, Thomas, about trends in music technology of the last week. I mean, this is actually quite challenging, right? How many trends appear within 1 week? Is it difficult for you to come up with those?
It's actually not that difficult because, to be honest, there are also things from, for example, September I could show, because this format is quite new, and so we have 4 million years of human history to cover in this conference.
That's great. Julia, today we're going to talk about a topic of online auditions,
Yes.
something that was actually your idea. And we'll talk more about it later on. But when did you come in contact with online auditions for the first time?
So my first time was, I think, in November, the end of November, actually. So it wasn't a long time ago, and it went really well for me. And it was a good experience. Yeah.
Great.
And I tried to share it with you.
Yeah. So we talked about this topic briefly, and we said, like, okay, let's take a real world sample of what is happening out there in terms of auditions. Auditions are, for those of you who are in music, and I suspect that many of our audience are musicians themselves, or know a musician. Auditions are really central for us. On the one hand, getting into a music school. On the other hand, applying for jobs. These are really central elements of how we perform, how we do our jobs. And so what happens when you can't travel, when you can't see people, when everything is really falling down? We wanted to know from people who have direct experience. And so it's my great pleasure to announce for today that we have 3 really distinguished guests. Alberto Pagani, who is a dancer, and interesting question about how we're going to essentially do an online edition with dance. Hi, Alberto. Actually, I'll have you in the show a little bit later.
Hello.
Just say hi right now. Nicola will do the tech trends first. I just want to make sure that everyone knows who's going to be on the show later on. Then we'll also have the president of the Mozarteum University in Salzburg, Elisabeth Gutjahr. There she is.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to have you here.
This, by the way, not planned, but I like it. That's great. And third, and most certainly not least, Jasper Parrott from Harrison Parrott, joining us from London, I believe. Hello, Jasper.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Yes.
Hello.
So great to have you all. So that's what will be coming up in about 10 minutes or so. Now we want to dive into the music tech trends of the last week, or 4 million years.
But maybe let's do some greetings to the audience. Greetings from Mexico, and hello, Bas Grasmeier. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Bas, yes, Bas is
pronounced
also
wrong.
listening. That's awesome.
Antonia Becchi, Alfred Endure Besley. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight or this afternoon. Yes, Thomas, show us your.
Yeah, before we dive into the tech trends, we should remind the audience also to go to www.karajanmusictech.com because we have planned something, Matthias, for the time from the 22nd to the 26th.
Yes, now you can apply to become a member of our community. Essentially, we want to hear from you. What is your vision for music? What are your interests in technology? And then you can join our group, our brain trust for music and tech. And we'll have some very interesting features for you in store that we will unveil over the next couple of weeks. But to say, I think the most critical one, if you want to participate in our conference, either by interacting and discussing, or if you want to even become a speaker, then make sure that you join our brain trust for music and tech. And we're looking forward to having you.
Perfect. And today is like a little glimpse into this world, and we will start by showing you some extraterrestrial things. Please, Nikolai, show this first video. We have to be very silent and listen carefully. So you can see there are no Martians on Mars. The first audio sample from the Perseverance Mars rover NASA sent to Mars. I think it was last week. It's very recent sound.
So there's not much in terms of music going on Mars yet.
Yeah, and a good place for social distancing or physical distancing during these times. No one's disturbing you while you're doing homework, working from home. I mean, yeah.
Fly to the planets, yeah.
What do you think? You personally, would you like to go to another planet to avoid, trash on Earth, or do you think we take all humanity's problems with us?
Julia, ladies first.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think I would prefer the planet Venus, of course, because I'm a woman.
And I want our planet to be okay. So
of course,
let's not think about Plan B.
Yeah,
Planet
B. Planet B. We should have two great planets, I think.
Awesome. What else do you have, Thomas?
The next thing is I tried to do music online, since in the real world I'm only able to sing. So I was using this Chrome Music app and also another music app. And let's dive into this. So I discovered this website with 10 addictive browser plugins, so they called it. And this is how it works. Basically creating chords. My number one hit. And another one is this Launchpad. It's more in the hip hop style. I tried to create something very short today.
And this happens in the browser, so you don't have to install any software.
That's right, yeah. You're just using your mouse, or maybe it's also able to be connected to your keyboard, your computer keyboard, I mean. It's a good low-level way to dive into this world of music creating. I think it's phenomenal because, 30 years ago it was not possible to do it at this intuitive pace and very quick without having to spend 20,000 euros or 20,000 Deutsche Marks or shilling for a synthesizer.
But how much can you really do with it? It looks very simple on the surface. Is it really something where you think like you can create a really satisfying musical experience, or is it just a game right now?
At this first, when I tried it at first, it was not able to dive that deeply into this matter. I think when you pay for it, you also have the possibility to record it properly. Yeah. And there are many alternatives to it, but there are options to do it. So the word gets better. so to say, because my words when I was talking about humans was a bit negative. No. I like human ingenuity and creativity. And one person that's also very creative, we mentioned her last week, is Imogen Heap. And she created an initiative called the Creative Passport. And that's basically a verified digital ID for music makers where they can access, update, and manage information about themselves and about their works, and then exchange it, for example, to with Jasper Parrots. So agents or music labels can access these data points. Let's have a quick look into how she explains
Why
it.
am I doing this? Well, I've been in the industry for 25 years and I have done a lot of admin in my time, and so have the team that I've worked with over the years. I feel like I'm putting in the same information time and time again, chasing stuff unnecessarily. I wish the music industry wasn't quite so complex. In fact, I reached a frustration point that drove me to sharing a future vision of the music industry I wished would be. I took this seed of an idea and I invited some musicians and some services to a few hack weekends in London to see what we could come up with.
And there she created this creative passport with
So
guys and people from that were able to code. Yeah.
So is this like a place where you can once enter all of the metadata for your music and then people can get it from there and it will always be right and correct?
Yeah, it's like a real passport. And you can also like upload your bank account number for all the royalty things, as far as I understood. So having a central point for your digital music person, basically. Quite an innovative approach, in my opinion. Yeah. Have you experienced something like this before, or how are you editing your data or for the institute? Is it easy to access your information? With from Karajan, for example?
It's data is a big pain point in the music industry because everyone has their own system, and that may sound like a minor detail, something that no one should be worrying about, but in fact, in the end, it means do you get your money or don't you get your money? And this is why it's really crucial to get it right. And I think this is a really helpful initiative of Imogen. And I have a suspicion that it's also connected to her blockchain initiatives. So it's a really decentralized approach, which gives more power to the artists in this.
Yeah. In one of her videos, she mentioned that she wants to give the power back to the artists, and I personally like it. I think everyone has to decide for themselves. I think some people would be against it from the industry, but it's a democratization aspect, and I like it quite a lot. And one last thing, when you now have created your own music, what are you doing? You are trying to upload it, and when you don't have a music video, you are having these kind of services, namely services that are creating visualizers. And let's have a look into this.
So this is doing this on the fly?
They are doing that on the fly, yeah. But here, for this video example, they sped the process a bit up because they were shoveling through several effects, things like this. And when you're putting in the URL, you will also be able to see this afterwards. Here on YouTube, you can just make your own mind about how people are using these, because he's like comparing 5 of the best audio visualizers on his YouTube channel. Yeah.
So you think so much?
Wave, WAVVE, but there are lots of other tools.
So Julia, for your next album, will you use a visualization tool before you upload it?
I mean, I have to get into it first. But yeah, why not?
I think it depends a lot on the style. Like right now, it looks very sort of poppy, with really bright colors and so on. It might not be the best for. Or is this interactive? Like if you play sad music, it's gonna give you some shades of gray and pastel colors.
It's adaptable. Nice, yeah. you can make it react to how high you sing or how low you sing. You can change backgrounds. But when you want to have like perfect imagery, you should use your own video graphics agency, I think, because there are music videos before the real music videos come out in the pop industry, and they have like perfect visualizations where they have a word coming out of a tree in a good shape. So when you want to have something customized, you have to pay a bit more.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Thomas, for this overview of what's new on the web. I want to now move on to our topic, online auditions. And Julia, I mentioned earlier that you started you have had this topic idea, and that you actually yourself were in an online audition. And I'm curious to hear a little bit about your experience when you had to go through this process. Tell us a little bit about it, please.
I mean, my experience personally went really well, because I applied for an opera production in Israel, and therefore I don't had the chance to fly to Israel also of the COVID situation now. So I was singing directly at my studio here at home in Salzburg, and studio. I used my cell phone actually with a good microphone, and the funny thing was that my personal pianist, she accompanied me. She accompanied me, and that felt really secure, because we know each other and everything. We practicing the pieces, and also there was a little bit of a distance between the phone. So I wasn't that nervous like in a usual audition. So I could focus more on singing, on the impression, and therefore I guess it went really well. And
Wow,
so I think
you also did other auditions before. What was the main difference for you in terms of preparation? Would you say it's like similar, or do you focus on other things when you know that people only see you in the small image?
Actually, I didn't know this before, because I did the preparation as usual, like studying the piece and go through every detail and all these kind of things, what you're doing before. And then I thought, okay, I'm just doing it like the normal auditions, and we'll see what will happen. And I felt, okay, I'm on the stage. There are my audience, and
Cool.
I had the normal situation in me, but a little bit different.
Well, I like the fact that you said you were less nervous. I would have been more nervous, I guess. And I'm curious to find out how our next guest was reacting. Alberto Pagani is a dancer. Welcome, Alberto, first of all, on stage.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, ciao.
Ciao, yes.
Buonasera. Buonasera.
Buonasera.
Sì, buonasera.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Alberto.
Thank you.
You studied in Salzburg at the Salzburg Experimental Academy of Dance. You have been, a frequent contributor at the Salzburg Festival. And I think, where are you right now? You're not in Salzburg, are you?
No, for now I'm in Berlin. I am working here. But I will be back soon in Salzburg in a couple of months to start rehearsing. And so, for now I'm
cross the fingers for that.
Exactly. Right. Hopefully we will be performing in May. And we will see. We will see.
By the way, performing, we have a little video that shows a little bit of your work. If I can ask Nikolai to play that, we can take a look at what it is that you do. So tell us a little bit about the performance that we're seeing here. I mean, we have the music down so that we can talk over it.
Okay, so this is a solo that I performed in New York in 2019. and it's Oversing, and here I'm in Berlin, in Friedrichshain. And yeah, I'm mostly working on improvisation most of the time, as we can see here. And actually, I am pretty much into improvising on classical music and opera. Maybe you might recognize this place. It's in front of the Haus für Mozart. And
yeah, that's the lobby of the Haus für Mozart.
It's from above the stairs. Exactly.
Nice view.
And so I'm mostly interested in combining these two passions of mine, contemporary dance, improvisation, and classical music that I started to enjoy and really like once I got to Salzburg, when I started to work for the Festspiele and getting to know this new world. And
you know, I want to, Nikolai, can you jump back to that moment in the lobby of the Haus for Mozart? Because I mean, I can see there are certain moments that one could capture in an online audition with a simple setup, but something like this where you have a lot of movement, how does that work in an online audition? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, how that is as a dancer, really?
Exactly. That's actually what I found interesting while Julia was explaining about her kind of audition. We have a very big difference because already for example, in our case, a good microphone was sort of enough to give the best impression of what she could give, let's say. For us, it's a bit different because exactly, sometimes we also need to show how we move in the space, but not just how we move, like how we travel. And that's a bit complicated because, for example, not always you are able to book studios. Like, for example, now in Berlin, we are able to, but for example, in the first lockdown, I was in Salzburg and I didn't have the chance to do that. And so in that case, it's also up to the choreographer to prepare the audition in a way that they can somehow skip the part, or they can, rely on some old material and go with trust, let's say.
So do they also give you more room for creativity then in the online audition versus the physical edition, in the sense that, you know, they ask you to maybe produce a video ahead of time, or is this something that normally doesn't happen?
Actually, I did 2 online auditions, and they were quite different between each other because one was in the beginning of the pandemic, so it's everything a bit improvised, and another one was in December, which, you know, they start to find more and more solutions. So, for example, the first one, in the beginning, we were having a lot of improvisation. The choreographer gave us many tasks on what to work on. So we had the chance to work with what we had. Like, I didn't have a big space at the time. So I somehow managed to show what I could. And until, for example, a moment when they started to teach us a phrase, that's the moment when I lost them a bit, because I mean, we all know that sometimes internet is not working, the connection is jumping. And so you maybe miss some moments, which if I miss some informations in a choreography, then it's like, okay, maybe can we go a bit back? And if it was a one-to-one, would have been maybe easier, but usually it's like up to 5 people in a Zoom meeting. Usually it's on Zoom. So also that influenced a bit, the fact that it's not a one-to-one.
Well, that's cool. So
how was your university? Was you very nervous?
Somehow, yes. Somehow I was. I mean, the thing is that in contemporary, in auditions for contemporary dance productions, you never know what's gonna happen. That's the thing. You're not going there with your piece done, and then you're like, okay, I know what I have to do. it's always okay, let's see what they are gonna ask me to do. So I was a bit nervous.
That's exactly like here now.
Exactly. What are they gonna ask? And but yeah, so I was nervous because I didn't know. I really had like maybe 2 meters square, something like that space. So I was really wondering what they would have been, what they would have asked, and that was what made me the most nervous. But also was somehow weird the fact of usually you travel, so you have to pick a flight and arrive there, and you go to the hotel, and then in the morning you wake up early so that you can get warm. And on that day, I was waking up 1 hour and a half earlier and just doing my warm up, and then going to the living room and be like, okay, I'm ready. So that was. I didn't really feel. I on that time I didn't really feel the vibe of the audition. To be honest, I didn't feel I'm going auditioning. Who's gonna be here? And that's something that I really missed. Not seeing other people. I mean, I could see them, but in a tiny square.
Yes.
So also you miss that energy, because we always have group auditions. We are like, I mean, it depends. Sometimes there's 100 people auditioning or even more. And so you really miss that energy before you get to the studio, when you're in the studio. Also the competition that you can create by seeing how the others are doing the material. So in that case, that's something that I didn't enjoy, let's say. The fact of being just me in my room and doing what I could. Yeah,
so you're
that was
a little
first
separate
experience
from the rest. Yeah,
Exactly.
Alberto, this is really, really exciting, and I
Yes.
want you to stay on stage with us, but I want to bring in Elisabeth
Sure.
Gutjahr now. Elisabeth Gutjahr is the president. Hello, Elisabeth.
Hi.
Hi.
She is essentially also down the road here in Salzburg right now, and I'm really happy to have Elisabeth here with us today. She's the president of the University Mozarteum in Salzburg, and we're partners in the Karajan Music Tech Conference and have known each other for a while now. And you do amazing things over there at the university with films, innovation around Mozart, other topics as well. But I want to talk to you about how did the university cope with the situation that most likely you couldn't have these normal auditions like you usually had? Can you tell us a little bit about how that went for you?
Yes, of course, we tried to do everything as normal as possible. So, and we were not prepared to this situation. The first thing is our audition, for example, for the entrance exam. We try to invite people in a little bit other way than normally. I give you an example. Normally we have 400 applications for 10 student places in singing, for example. And normally these people come from Asia, from America, from all over the world, just to sing for 20 minutes and then they have to fly back. So imagine hundreds of people are coming and only really maybe 10, 12, 20 have a real chance. The rest is just have this trip and see Salzburg and bye-bye. So this is a new chance to invite them to show their possibilities, their capacity via video, and to help to make a better ecology footprint. So they stay at home, and we try to understand their personality, their possibilities, and to choose a very small group of the best application. And this one, we invite them to come.
Okay.
So
there's two steps. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this we did in a lot of entrance exam. So we try and this is a good experience to see. We have a responsibility also for these young people who sometimes really has to look where they can get the money to come here to Salzburg.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a better, more respectful way to meet them,
Mm-hmm.
and to give them a chance to show their possibilities via video.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next step, if they really show the quality we think which is enough, we invite them to come.
Mm-hmm.
So this experience lead us to continue with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even if COVID won't be so strong as now,
Mm-hmm.
we will continue with this kind of organization of the entrance exam.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And in some of the exam, for example, in the percussion, Martin Grubinger, they only make this entrance exam via Zoom and video, and
Really?
was very happy with that.
Oh, really?
Yes, they say that's but it's also a kind of question of standard.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you showing when you put your camera and your micro? What
Mm-hmm.
kind of standard is really enough, or the best one, to show what is important?
Mm-hmm.
I just give you an example. As a dancer, normally you have to see the whole person in the room, in the space. And normally, if you have a violin player, of course, you ask a violin player not only to make every note correct or to play in the right tempo, but you also want him to perform the space, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You also the singer, you want him that he's able to sing over 20 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And the singing as beautiful as in the first 2 meters near the
Mm-hmm.
person. And this quality, we don't have the technique everywhere, the technology.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to reduce our perspective and have new things we could discover.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the emotion in the face.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the way how hands are playing an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So the way how a person is breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the focus with the camera is much more near the body, near the person.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have this emotional resonance,
Mm-hmm.
you need for performance.
Mm-hmm.
If you have too much distance, it's quite difficult without really an how you call that, a professional performance to fill the room for a camera. But the camera has the advantage that it could be very near to the person, and the kind of performance changes. It's clear.
You know, what you talk about is really interesting because the question of how close you can be to someone who's performing is also a question of how do you create a connection with others, and this idea of creating communities, micro communities in this case, is something that I find very fascinating in this time of social distancing. Where right now we have a relatively close connection here through the cameras, but at the same time we're broadcasting it to a lot of people out there, and I think it's interesting if you can demonstrate as a young artist that you are able to actually bridge this gap, and that you actually can play with these media in a creative and effective way. If you allow me, I'll bring in Jasper to the group. Jasper Parrott is the chairman of Harrison Parrott, one of the largest and for sure most prestigious artist management companies in the world. Jasper, welcome on our stage.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, it's great to have you. While we flip through the endless possibilities of our video system. Jasper, to bring you into the discussion, you started something remarkable end of last year, remarkable for, I think, for an artist management company, and that is you started your own streaming service. And this is all centered around, of course, bringing intimate and interesting music performances to the public. Have you come to this idea through the changes in COVID-19, or was this something that was on your mind for longer even?
I think that we were always and always have been interested in trying to get to understand what's going to be real and active in the future. So we are always interested in innovation, and we've always been interested also in the collaboration between the arts, which of course create different perspectives and different focal points, and indeed, in a way, different emotions in terms of how they are then communicated. Whether we would have gone, therefore, in the direction of making our own platform as a priority, I can't really tell. But in a way, the decision to do so was so very so very close to the realities of what we saw as being necessary and desirable, and a way of, in a way, engaging with what we feel is definitely going to be the future for performing arts of all kinds. So in a way, COVID prompted something which I guess in one way or another we would have engaged with.
And the topic of our conversation is online auditions. How do you experience this trend as someone who is bringing together artists on the one hand, and then the people who are employing the artists for concerts? Has this played a role in your industry, or is this something that you didn't have to worry too much about?
I think it's, at least as far as we are concerned, I think the role is not yet very strongly defined, because I think there are still other ways of being able to promote talent, if you like, to the people who will in the end need to or take an interest in talent. And I think that, but at the same time, of course, this is something we have to be very conscious of, particularly in a way, singers, because of the fact that there is a much greater tradition in the sort of solo area of auditioning people for specific parts. Whereas auditioning for instrumental artists or for conductors is not something that has really caught on in a very significant way. On the other hand, it has caught on and is absolutely essential now in terms of informing people and sharing the material of, I would say, live performance, especially at a time when that live performance may not be available to the people that you want to interest in that performance. So, I mean, in a way, it's an interesting convergence, I would say, because as people's sophistication in finding ways of communicating their performances through visual and video means has improved, so we have also learned more about how to, in a way, orchestrate those images in the context of something which is going to bring about better opportunities for the artists we represent, and indeed accelerated careers.
But you would not choose the next person you work with solely on a couple of videos that are sent in and an online audition. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I wouldn't like to be quite as strict as that, because it is a very flexible and elastic process. And I mean, what decides one, at least what decides me, that a performing artist is really interesting, comes from a very wide range of different factors. And a lot of it comes from a sort of intuitive sense about the person of the performer and the relation of the person to the art. And to a surprising degree, one can make judgments on relatively quickly in some degree and in some cases. And in those cases, there is no reason why the sort of first introduction, the first sort of spark of mutual interest should not be accomplished through some form of visual getting to know you. And I mean, one very interesting point to me that what Elizabeth was saying is that the very fact that you can actually see gestures and emotions and attitudes in a very sort of intensive way through maximization of picture or whatever is both enormously helpful and valuable, but it can also be very misleading because it can actually mean that there is a sense of engagement with something which is very intense and private and immediate, whereas actually the art might need something which is able to communicate in a different way, in a larger space, to a live public, and where actually that the features of the sort of focus and concentration are not necessarily the right thing. Or the most important thing. I mean, the other thing which I think Elizabeth made the point about is that, particularly with singers, it's very, very difficult to judge the scale and the potential of the voice if it's not in an actual venue and where there are the circumstances of either an orchestra or an accompaniment. It's very difficult to judge that if it's in too intense and close a focus, in my view.
Elizabeth, do you want to respond?
I would have
I didn't understand anything, and there's a trouble connecting. I don't know. Unfortunately, okay. I didn't understand anything from the last.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, there was an audio problem.
Yes.
I would have a question.
And the video too.
Yeah. Because for the musicians or for the instrumentalists, there is normally a curtain audition where they play behind the curtain. And would there be a way also to do it for singers, not to judge them for the first picture, how they look, how they act? Would that be a possibility also maybe online?
So audio
well,
only.
I mean, first of all, the auditioning behind curtains is generally, of course, for musicians who are going to join an orchestra. And that's for all sorts of reasons, to try to get round the possibility of prejudice or some sort of special advantage. And that seems to me an important, if somewhat primitive, mechanism for trying to enlarge the opportunity and to have more inclusiveness. It was, of course, very necessary in the beginning when many orchestras were not open to female performers, and to actually, in a way, since many of the auditioning panels were made up of men, there was a high degree of what you might call of assumptions and prejudice, which needed gradually to be opened up and changed. And actually, in a way, with conductors, that would be a very interesting experiment, which would be also to try to see whether there could be a matching up of the visualization of what a conductor achieves with an orchestra, and purely depending upon actually what you hear. Well, up to a point, you get that with radio broadcasts. And of course, for most of my life, that's more or less was the next best tool apart from being in the concert. So
I want to bring in another aspect, and that is when you look at acting, and I don't know if this is like a theoretical concept that is actually used in the acting community, but in acting there seems to be two types of actors, more or lessly: the ones who play in the theater and the ones who exclusively play for cameras. And I'm wondering if this kind of distinction is something that we will see also more often in music now, because I think it's a very different way of performing when you perform for a recording, which is an artificial an artificial thing versus in a live situation. And I know quite a few musicians who are very good at one but not good at another. And this could have all sorts of reasons, but is this something that you believe could now develop, or will this be of secondary importance in your opinion? Elisabeth, for instance, do you see any of this kind of development in the way you train musicians?
Yes, it depends on, of course, what the musician wants to develop. The first thing is what the musician itself, what the person itself wants to do. But it's a wonderful field of experiments to experience oneself. How do I act in a situation of camera? What would, if I am the camera myself, what would I like to see? Mm-hmm. So to change perspective, to have a more view of outside. Yes, we are working a little bit. We start to work more seriously with cameras. Mm-hmm. First in the acting field and theater. Our students worked a lot with cameras now. Really try to find out what is important. But it changed also the content. Because if you see an actor, his quality in the voice, in the speaking voice, is to make it natural, even if he's have a voice who is going 50 meters away. Yeah. So yeah. He really is acting in a big space, but he also find very pianissimo sounds in all this.
Yeah.
Excuse me, just my daughter is coming. The other thing,
I'm waiting for mine to come through that door.
Music. There's a whispering, there's just a very small breathing. Yeah. And these very, very little sounds are so close to the micro that they get a new content of art. Mm-hmm. And opera singer, of course, if they make only a little bit of noise, nobody will hear it. Mm-hmm. It's not important. But opera is a voice who is filling all the space. But maybe in this kind of mixture, we will discover new qualities in classical way of doing music, being and using the possibility to be very, very, very close, to have very, very fine nuances in pianissimo moments. Mm-hmm. And also to work with what do we hear as atmo, what do we hear as surround noise, and how do we deal with it when we make very pianissimo sounds. So I think in doing arts and working with arts, musically, with your voice, with your instrument, it's a fantastic challenge to discover new things. Mm-hmm. But we are really at the very beginning seeing what pop music is doing. We have a long way to do.
To be give an example.
They are very virtuous in being so close that you have the feeling your ears on the mouth of the singer.
Yeah.
And no distance between. You are nearly in the heart of the singer. Mm-hmm. And the classical music is trained to fill big stages, really to have thousands of people without any micro, really to be in a real situation without technical support and to be as natural as possible with your instrument, your voice.
So you raise an interesting point, and that is that through the sort of barrier that we now face through the restrictions that we have. We are challenged to be creative in new ways, and I want to bring in Alberto again on this and ask him about the restriction of this online medium in dance. Is there something developing now in your field that is specifically produced for the sort of the little square medium that everyone carries around, the cell phones? Is there dance for cell phones? Is there dance for the small screens that everyone can now produce for?
Mostly what dance is, in which direction is moving, is mostly just broadcasting live performances. Many companies just put it online, old productions. That's mostly how dance is just developing, not actually developing. But yeah, there's not much going on as some sort of revolutionary way to propose dance. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's yet a new way to perform dance, but most of the time there's shows that are broadcasted live. That's more or less what's doable right now. And there's a lot of shared training that which is less about performance. It's more about practice, let's say.
In between dancers or choreographers and dancers, or how does that work?
Yeah, mostly between dancers. Happen to me to be part of this sharing situation. And yeah, you most of the time just meet online, because that's what you can do, and you somehow do some sharing training. And so yeah, that's how we are moving. I mean, most of the time it's mostly surrounded it's going around more the learning process than the performative process. And
so example, you get together online, you learn from your peers, you actually create a community of those who are seeking for new ways of expression. But you're saying the industry hasn't caught up with this. You don't know of any formats that would actually bring this kind of experience onto the screen. I think this is something that could be born out of this live stream.
Could be.
Yes.
Julia.
I want to add some question from the audience through the process. He says, greetings from Portugal. And when a professional musician faces limitations in its performance, such as vocal dystonia, what are the most important skills to prevent losing self-identity? And how important is during the learning process to ask ourselves, who am I without my instrument? So question to all of you.
Philosophical question. Who am I without my instrument?
Nobody.
Well, I think that's an incredibly interesting point. And actually, what I was going to say after listening also to Alberto is that what I have noticed and very much welcome and support is the way that artists, exceptional artists certainly, and very brave artists, are seeking to challenge themselves and challenge their sort of idealized perception of how to communicate the art which they are working with in ways and with technology which was not previously available. And so it also means, of course, that in some cases, natural limitations in terms of actually, if you like, size of voice can be to a certain extent put to one side. And you can actually reinvent an enormous amount of the repertoire and the relationship with other performers through that sort of incredible innate sense of empowerment and of risk-taking. And that seems to me to be one of the most extraordinary benefits that come out of this strange dystopian world, because I've seen many artists who might have had to wait years and years before they had the sort of recognition to be able to take the sort of risks, and see them actually challenge themselves and also the people or the environment in which they work in very exciting and innovative ways. And that's, for me, one of the most motivating things about the way things are developing.
Mm.
Yeah.
What for me also is very, very interesting as what is privacy and what is an official place for art. We saw Alberto dancing in Berlin on the street, and we are used to see concerts and concert halls or little salons for that. But now with this media, we can go into private spaces and mixed spaces and hidden spaces and ugly spaces, which are in a contrast to the music we are doing. And the space can change, and you can, how you could tell different stories, an acoustic story with the music and a story of your movement, performance, behavior in different community or private or hidden spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also very interesting. We had this rituals, rites, how musicians with their black coats and going onto stage and making like this and playing and so on. And if all this doesn't happen, if we only see the person in backstage somewhere on the street playing, maybe something new happens. Maybe we hear new. We are not so, how you call, maybe a prisoner of our attitudes and prisoners of what we are expecting.
Mm-hmm. And what others expect of us. Right.
I mean, I think there are works also which can be innovated in a very powerful, which would never be possible in a large, in a sort of tactile space. I mean, I think of Orfeo, or I think of some of these great stories, and in a way you could indeed, through these additional means, you can put them in, I don't know, in a sewer somewhere underneath a city, or in I was actually very excited about the idea of doing an extraordinary Fidelio in Berlin on the, I can't remember the place, but it was the former listening station, the sort of spy station. And we got quite far in thinking out how that could be done. There would probably need to be only a small audience, or could only be a small audience, but maybe something could be said about the piece which would be impossible in normal theatre.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it requires this specific place. Now we kind of live in a time where places no longer exist. I mean they exist. I sit in a space, but it doesn't matter in which one I sit. I could change a virtual background and I'm someplace else. Isn't that the real challenge? How can we actually create something meaningful in music and art and dance that is not referring to a space? It's sort of in the virtual world. It has no space really.
Well, also, you, I think, put your finger on something which I would very much like to hope you will explore on another occasion, which is in my absolute certainty that there needs to be a transformational change in the concept of actually listening spaces or performing spaces. Because even the most wonderful modern, contemporary, recently built performing halls are generally still based upon a 19th century principle, which is you have rows of people facing in one direction and observing non-participating way the people on the stage. And I am absolutely convinced that this will not be a model that will last or survive, and it has to be totally reimagined. And I think what's one of the most exciting things is that there are artists, but there are also, in a way, entrepreneurs and there are visionaries who are now thinking about this and engaging with it. And the digital and the visual and the technological is so absolutely key to that new area of liberation of the arts.
Yeah, it's going in a new direction or new dimension even. And I think that in many ways this change that has been brought about in the last year is like a catalyst for developments that otherwise would have taken, 5 or 10 years, or maybe not even taking place at all. Yeah, well, this was really. It's 6:00. We said like this is 45 to 60 minutes.
Yes.
This is about 60 minutes now. I think we can go on, but I also know that there will be other occasions for us to take up the thread. I want to thank you all for your contributions. It was for me a very interesting kaleidoscope of views. I also want to thank our audience out there for their comments and for tuning in from really all over the world. We will experiment more with this format. And in the meantime, I want to invite you all to go to our website, karajanmusictech.com, and apply to become a member of our brain trust for visionaries and decision makers in music. We very much want to hear from you, and we would like to extend an invitation to join us on this journey. In March 22nd to 26th, we will have our annual conference. This time it's fully online, like actually last year, but this time it's planned online. And I'm looking forward to seeing many of you on that journey towards the conference. And I see that my colleague Thomas is also in the picture, and I'm pretty sure that he wants to say something too, all of the things that I've forgotten to mention. So Thomas, take it away.
Yeah, we've got lots of interactive shows these days. So if you want to participate, just message Matthias or us as the conference through social media, and we try to make it happen.
Thank you, Thomas.
And now we have some little bit of funny pictures for you to see how actually a live audition shows. Please, Nikolai, show us the picture. So that is a singer, is a colleague of mine who's having a live audition, and that's actually how it looks like.
Could you zoom in, please?
That's right.
So
we forgot to show this in the beginning, so we're doing it now.
So that's the real life, and we have another picture. Please show us that how you just prepared would see, or Elisabeth Gutierrez.
And he approved these images, by the way. So
yeah, exactly. He knows we're showing this, so great. Well. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you on other platforms soon. And in the meantime, I wish you a great evening.
Yes.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.